everybody. I'm Heidi Hurley, and I'm here to share with you some real fun opportunities with art. This series is called Exploring and Creating, and I'm here to share with you lots of different materials with each one of our sessions. What I'm going to do today is we're going to talk about watercolor. And watercolor is one of those mediums that people get kind of freaked out about, and I'm here to share it with you. I'm a former director of art for Braintree Public Schools. I'm a former art teacher. I retired just a little while ago. I'm an artist myself, and I really enjoy working in all types of materials. One of my philosophies is you can't make a mistake. You can't get too serious about this stuff. So I really want to share with you watercolor. So what are we going to do today? I'm going to share with you a bunch of different materials, a bunch of different supplies, some techniques, talk to you a little bit about an artist, and just kind of share these things with you. You can try them out. You can watch over and over again if you want to. But really, there's nothing to be afraid of. I really want you to try things. So let's start from the very beginning. No mistakes. You don't need to have a piece of paper and then put the paint on there and say, oh no, I made a mistake. You know what? Paint right over it. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. There's no mistakes. I'm looking for you to explore. What does that mean? I want you to try something that's different. I want you to try something that, what will happen if I do this? So it's really about trying something without a result in your head. I want you to try and explore. The other thing is, if you make an oops, which I don't call a mistake, I call it an oops. So if you make an oops, we can turn it into something, okay? So we're not gonna throw anything away. We're gonna keep the paper. And look, these are a bunch of my oops. I save these. I save all the paper that I have. I save little samples, and then we can work on top of them, and I can show you how these work. The other thing is aha. So what's aha? Aha is when you take that paintbrush and you put it on the paper and you go, ah, that's really awesome, right? So this is what I'm looking for you to try. These classes and sessions are, as I said, something for you to explore. I'm not an expert. I've taken classes myself. I have taken watercolor portraiture. I loved it, and I gained all that information from Yang Chen, who's an amazing watercolor portraiture artist. I've taken classes at Mass College of Art. I've done all kinds of things with watercolor, but then from those, I've taken those lessons and I've made my own style and technique. And that's really what I want to share with you. Okay, so you ready? All right. So in each session, what I'm going to do is share with you an artist or a couple of artists that work in the medium. So the one that I want to introduce to you, his name is Andrew Wyeth. And I'm not going to tell you a lot about Andrew Wyeth. Andrew has famous dad. Andrew is known for all of his works that he's done. But I picked Andrew Wyeth because his work is so earthy and really, really beautiful. And he's known for working in watercolor and gouache, which we'll talk about at another time. But some of his styles and techniques are so beautiful and so rough. You know, it's like he didn't spend hours deliberating over the background of some of these pieces. Look at this beautiful bucket of blueberries right here. And the background is all kind of rough and grainy. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And then over here, this blueberry basket, another one from Maine. So this one here has spatters. It looks like he took a toothbrush and he put paint on it and spattered it. So I'll show you a little technique about how you might want to do that. So Andrew, his work I really enjoy. All right, so he's someone for you to look at. Go look him up, search him on the internet, see if you can find him. But the other person that inspires me is an artist by the name of Sarah Mitta. Now, Sarah Mitta is, I believe, a sketch artist. And what Sarah Mitta has here, and it's an older book, but it's from the south of France. It's a sketchbook done with watercolors. So Sarah would go and document her trip in my style, all right? So my style is usually cute and tiny little things that I would draw with a real detailed paintbrush. So Sarah Mitta opposite of Andrew Wyeth would create some cute little watercolors and document color. And I've done this multiple times. I go on a trip and I make little teeny tiny squares and I try to match the color of the sand, or I try to match the color of the water, because you're never going to capture it really, might in a photograph, but doing it on your own makes it really special. So Sarah Mitta, look at these olives. These are little watercolor olives. Who would know that you could just sit at your table and watercolor a bunch of olives? So again, Sarah Mitta and Andrew Wyeth are two of my favorites. I'm more about Sarah Mitta because that's my style. That's what I like, and that's how I like to work. But Andrew Wyeth is earthy and loose and rough, where Sarah Mitta is a little bit more controlled. So I like to do both of those. So those are my two artists, and you can research more on your own, but what I'm going to do now is talk about the material. All right, so watercolors. Immediately, everybody thinks back to elementary school or middle school when you get these little kits that had the 8 colors on there, and they usually, when you got them, they were all dirty because the kid before you didn't clean them off really well. So this is fine if this is what you have. I use them sometimes. I really kind of enjoy them. But these sets are very inexpensive and they're fun to start with, all right? The name watercolor, what do I need to make them work? Water, right? So in order to make these work, well, I'll show you how you can do it. You can work with lots of water or very little water. The other ways that you can work are in tubes. So they sell kits. I don't know if I can say the name of the store, but there are lots of art supply stores and chains that have tubes of watercolor. They're not very expensive. They sell them individually, so if you run out of a color, you can go buy particular colors, or you can buy a whole set just to get started. This one happens to come with a palette, and the palette's down here where you would mix your colors. And then sometimes a paintbrush would come with it or something. It's a great starter kit. I can take this out and have a tray where I can really mix my colors really well. So that's a good starter kit. They're not very expensive. You can start and buy an expensive set if you want to, but again, these are really fun. There are 2 types of travel kits. Mine are messy. I apologize immediately, but this is the way I work. So this is a little travel kit, and it comes with its own little palette. I hope you can see this. And a paintbrush. So when I travel, all I really need is the paintbrush, which comes in it and folds up. And it puts back on here. And it also has, so this has traveled with me everywhere. The only thing that's not on this is white. Now, some watercolor purists will say you never use white, but I happen to like to mix white with some of the colors to make it a little bit less intense. So sometimes I squeeze a little bit of white gouache or acrylic, not, in here. So a water-based acrylic, I might do that. But again, this is a cute little set that I like to use quite often. The other set, I shared these with my students when I traveled. This comes with the same thing, a tray, and it comes with a blotter. So this way, you don't have to even bring your own water. It goes into the paintbrush. It's like a little vial, and you put the water in here, and then you squeeze it, and you get your water on the paintbrush. This is great for traveling. This kit has white, and it has lots of really nice, intense colors. And what's really fun that I've really just learned about, they come with little sponges. So these little sponges, you use them to blot your brush, or you use them to get rid of extra water, or you can actually use it to paint on top of a surface. So I thought those were really kind of neat and kind of fun to share with all of you. These kits you can buy at art supply stores or buy online. Again, this was not very expensive, but I love it. It's like it goes with me everywhere. There's another material that I'll just introduce really quickly, and I'm not going to talk too much about it right now, but watercolor pencils. They're actually pencils that have the same type of pigment that you would use with watercolor. So when you draw something onto a surface and then you take plain water, the watercolor material that's in the colored pencil will blend and mix, and then you can work on top of it. If I get a chance today, maybe I'll just add some watercolor pencil to my piece. Who knows? We'll see what happens. All right, so that's the type of materials. We talked about tubes, we talked about trays, we talked about the real simple techniques, the different, not techniques, but the different materials that you can have. It can be about money. If you really want a very expensive set, go ahead, but I would start with something that you can work with just to get the feeling for what it is that you want to do or accomplish with watercolors. I do like the tubes for a couple reasons, but one of the things about tubes is that you can control the intensity of the color. So the more water I add to a tube, the more transparent it is. The less amount of water that I use, the more opaque it's going to be. So that's something with the tube. With the tray watercolors, it's a little bit harder to control it, but it's great to start off with. All right, so that's that. So ready? We're going to talk about paper. Woohoo! This is pretty darn exciting. There's watercolor paper out there. There's something, they label it, they call it watercolor paper. There's two types. There's a hot press and a cold press. Cold press is bumpy, and it absorbs everything immediately. So you can't feel it because you're watching it on TV, but this surface has a bump to it, all right? So the surface is bumpy, and that's a cold press. A hot press is a paper that is smooth to the touch, and it dries slower than the bumpy or the cold press. So what do I like to use? Well, I use whatever I can get, because what I do is I just experiment to see what works best for whatever it is that I'm using. So in a lot of my samples, I've gone out and purchased very expensive paper. When I do a project for somebody, I will use a hot press, and it's 4-ply. It's really thick. It has a beautiful deckled edge. This is Arch's watercolor paper. This is a sample piece that I did because I wanted to see the different techniques that I could come up with. All this is scrap paper. This is not meant for anyone. It's just for me, and see how controlled it is. It's square, lots of squares, but I tried something different in each one of these squares. And basically, this dried slowly. It doesn't buckle, meaning when you add water to it, it doesn't curl up. So sometimes if you buy a particular type of paper, once I add water to it, it might curl up because the water's causing the paper to contract a little bit. So heavy deckled paper. You can buy these in pads. You can also buy little pads like this that have different types of watercolor, and they're usually labeled really well. What I found that sometimes there's a watercolor paper that on one side is a smooth surface, and on another side is a deckled or a pebbled surface. So you can try out different techniques if you want to. These are great for going out sketching. So if you want to, I've gone to Pond Meadow a couple times, and I'll sketch and I'll paint. And when I do that, I get a really fun, the two different types of materials or the different colors. I just have these as a bunch of sketches. So I have some sketches that I've done in the past that I like to share with people. So for example, I think this was a Pond Meadow, little tiny little thing. This is on a cold press paper, not done. but I just looked at the colors in the paper. The other thing is, this is done at the beach, which I wish I was there right now, but I'm lying there looking up and painting this beautiful palm tree. So the difference between these two, one is really, really uncontrolled, very loose, and this one's very controlled. You can see the difference between the two. Are they finished? No, they're just sketches. I'm exploring. I love that. So a lot of my explorations are all, I love to paint little squares, play with color, just see what I can come up with. I'm inspired by Mitta, who goes back to her sketchbook with the little tiny sketches. I tend to work very small. And you can work big or small, it doesn't really matter, but here's an example. I was doing a series of, so there's 2 at one time, working. So paper, these are scraps. I don't throw anything away. They make great little gifts or gift cards or little notes that you can give to people, and they're really a lot of fun. All right, so that's really it about paper. Today I just have the different types. You can buy big sheets, very large sheets. You can buy them huge. I've done some paintings that are probably 30 by 40, or you can buy the small pads, whatever works best for you. All right, what am I going to paint? I'm going to paint after I talk to you about brushes, because you need your brushes to get some painting in. So I have a very favorite paintbrush, and this came from Yon Chen's class when I took the portraiture class. And this is a round, very soft. I don't think it's sable. It's called Black Velvet. And what is so nice about this is I can blot and I can make a really fine, fine, fine point. So there are different types of brushes out there, and I'll make sure I show you all of the ones that I have here. The difference between this brush, it has a nice flat top. It looks like a crew cut, very flat at the top. It's great for painting straight lines or straight surfaces. This is also a silver, and it's terrific for painting with. I like the silver brushes. A blotter. So this paintbrush is great for watercolor because it absorbs and holds a lot of water. So when I put water on my paper, this brush will hold a lot of water, and I can use this to paint or just to add water to a surface. So that's really good. I don't use this often, but when I do, I use this for my large paintings. And this will cover a surface, especially with water if I'm going to have a very loose technique. It's a wash brush. And basically what you use a wash brush for is exactly what it sounded like. I would take this and I would make a nice smooth transition with this brush. I don't use it often because I don't use, I really actually like my blotter better, but this is a good brush to have. The fan brush. This is a fine, very soft brush, and this is meant for watercolors. And what a fan brush will do is it will make very thin lines and make some really cool techniques. So I'll share that with you. And I have my double secret weapons that I absolutely love. So this is it says it's a 20-0. So it's the tiniest, you can't even see it at home. It is the tiniest, it's like maybe 2 brush hairs. Very, very fine for a lot of detail. I need double, triple glasses when I use this. But when I work, I love to use this brush for details. The next size up I have is a 2-0. And I really love to use a brush like that. I have other watercolor brushes that I like to use to cover areas and surface. Remember I mentioned the technique that Andrew Wyeth used with a toothbrush? This is awesome. So if you have an old toothbrush aside, you can add some paint to this and you just spatter away. Beautiful. Makes some really fun things. Finally, I just want to add a Sumi brush. A Sumi brush is used with Chinese calligraphy. It's beautiful. It holds a lot of water. It's made to hold ink, but it's terrific if you're looking to create some real cool motions and waves and water. I have a small sponge. It could be from your kitchen sink or it could be from anywhere, but this sponge is great for picking up extra watercolor, but it's also used to paint with to create a really cool technique. All right, and I'm going to add one extra thing. This is a white Crayola crayon. What is this used for? Well, it's like a resist. So water and wax don't mix very well, but if I put this on the surface and watercolor over it, the white will come through. So we might play with that a little bit today, but that's something. The other thing for materials that you might need is a 2H pencil. It's a very light pencil. You don't want something heavy like a 4B or a 6B. This is if you like to sketch something out, if you want to put this on the surface, it's very, very light. You're not going to see that. Some watercolor artists don't erase their pencil lines. They like to keep their pencil lines there. Some people will remove it. It's up to the individual. There's, as I said, there are no rules. However it is that you want to work with it. I have an X-Acto knife, and what an X-Acto knife can do is cut into the paper. And Andrew Wyeth does it often. If you look into his, like if you have a very dark picture and you want to show some white stripes or something, sometimes you can cut away at the paper and with the sharp lines. I don't know if I'll show you how to use it, but that's something I always have in my box when I'm working with it. Artist tape. So this is the stuff you can buy at the hardware store. Not very expensive. I just used it to adhere it to my paper. And then there's something called artist tape. And this is a light blue. You can also buy it in different lengths. The difference between the two, I don't think there's much. But if I remove this blue tape, it might pull away from the paper and it might rip the paper if I'm not careful. Whereas the artist tape is made so that it will gently pull away from the paper. If you notice, I squared this up and I have a piece of paper underneath here. And the reason why I did that is so that I can have a margin around the outside of my paper. You can measure it, you can control it, you can do all kinds of things when you're using tape. Sometimes, so this is really a fun exercise. Like if, say you want to do four pictures in one painting, maybe I take my tape and I go like this. So I can work on 4 individual pictures at once. And this margin in between will keep it nice and neat. I can measure it if I want to. Very rarely do I measure things. Kind of like what I end up with is what I have. But if you have a particular frame in mind, or you're going to finish a particular picture, I happen to take this little mat from a picture frame. I like to work in squares. And what I might do is I might use this, and I can remove the tape. And I might take my 2H pencil, or I can tape it on if I want to, but I might take this, like so. Very lightly with my pencil, I have drawn where my composition is going to be. Now, am I stuck with this? No. I could do a lot of different things with that. But I can go outside of it, and then I can erase away the pencil lines if I want to move it around. So our end product at the end of this will be a real quick painting. So all my techniques I'm going to show you, at the end of this, I'm going to have a painting with some of the techniques that we have. So we can go through that. So what I'm going to do is just show you a couple of techniques and show you the watercolors and the water and what I would do. I'm going to start with the very simple pan tray type watercolor. I have a paper towel. I have water. So some artists are very purists and they have a tub for water, and then they might have another one so that their brush can be super duper clean. Or I've seen some artists that have 3 different watercolors. The yellows might go in one and the blues might go in another, but you know what? Don't worry about it for now. I reuse my paper towels a lot because they dry and I can reuse those if I need to. I can do quite a few things with all of that. I'm working on an easel. I tend to work flat, but I'm going to show you how the water can dip and drip and do some great things. It's so much fun to play around with. I think what I will do to start is I'm going to take a kneaded eraser and I'm going to erase away these pencil lines because this is where I'm going to do my demonstrations of all the different techniques. So what do we need to do to get started? So this surface that I have, let me feel it, feels like it is I know it's watercolor paper, it's a smooth surface, so it's probably hot. It's going to take a while for it to dry, which is okay. I have lots of other watercolor papers with different types of styles and techniques. This is sold as a pad, and it says right on there that it's acid-free, cold press, heavyweight. And so these are great. You can cut them smaller and do some other fun things with it. But for right now, what I want to do is just show you if I were to take some colors and work with them. So down at the bottom, I took water, put it on the surface first, clear water, not dirty, and then I took my watercolors and just played around with it. All right, real simple. Up above, it's a dry brush. I took one color and a next, and they didn't really blend or mix together. It didn't spread out. It was very controlled. So if I take, this is my watercolor tray here, and I'm going to take I'm going to take my favorite brush. It doesn't have a name. Ralph. No, I don't know what his name is, but I love this paintbrush. If I lost this, I can't find it, so if anybody can find it for me. It's called a Silver Black Velvet 300S round. I've looked, I can't find it. It's starting to crack. I take good care of my brushes. So, first thing first, I think you remember this. If you take these watercolors and you're going to add a drip of water into each of the colors. All it is, I'm squeezing the top of the watercolor tray. I'm sorry you can't see this. I'll hold it up so you can see it. But I'm taking and putting a drip of water into each one just to get it activated. All right, so each one of these has a little bit of water in each one of these. What's fun is that the cover can act as my mixing tray. So they're all set up that you can do that. My brush is clean. I haven't added anything to it. So what I'm going to do to start, just for fun, this is fun, I don't have anything in mind, I'm going to paint a strip with water. All right, so it's just a strip. I didn't go over here, I just did like I don't know, 2 or 3 inches. I'm going to take one color. I love blue. I like every color except for orange, and all I'm going to do is just touch at the top of this. And then I'm going to let it drip. So you're going to see how it just goes down, moves its way down, and it almost looks like frost. So it's starting to drip. I can control this piece of paper if I take the paper off and turn it and do some really cool things with it. So I'm going to dip it in the water, go over to the tray. I'm still using this blue, but I'm adding a lot more water. And I'm just going to add some more drips. See how it's dripping down? This was not controlled. This was controlled at the top, and down at the bottom it's not. If I make it more intense, I'm going to take my paintbrush, maybe dip on the paper towel a little bit, do some real thick dots. Look, it's snowing. No, it's raining. No, I don't know what it is, but it's so cool. So if I'm just using this blue, notice if I paint right on top of it, again, get it nice and concentrated. I can get a really nice dark blue. Oh, look at this little puddle down here that's growing. So it's not going off the paper because that's where I stopped the water, and it's like a little basket at the bottom. It's holding on to the water. It's going, hello. So it's hanging on there. It's really, imagine when that dries, how cool that's going to be. But all I'm doing is just adding little dots. So with this one, so I added a line. Let's see what happens. It's kind of like a little dot down at the bottom. I'm loving this. What a fun thing this is. I don't know what it is, but it's awesome. I see a face. All right, so I've done this, which is the wet with the brush, and I'm just adding more lines or colors, or no colors yet. So I've got that. I love this little guy down the bottom. So if I want to pick something up, say that little cool thing that I liked at the bottom. Here's something cool. Take your paintbrush. It's the same paintbrush I've been using. I'm going to squeeze out all the extra water so it's very flat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to vacuum up that little drip. So I'm just putting it on top and it sucks it right up. So right now, that extra puddle that was down at the bottom, it's all gone. I don't have a big puddle floating. So it's just right there. Looks cool. So what I just did was put down some water. I took my watercolor tray, not the watercolor tubes. I made a concentration of that blue, and I just started at the top and let it drip. And then I added more water to it, and then I let it drip more, and then I went on top of it, and then I added some more dots. So since this has been drying, not that long because I talked too much, I can go back on top and add some more blues, and it'll show up now. You can see how all I'm using is this. It's a cool storm. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be fun. All right, so that's that. Let's talk a little bit about some thick and thin lines and maybe blending some colors. So because you have a paintbrush that can hold a lot of water and hold a lot of paint, what you can do is have two colors on this, which is really fun. I remember my dad teaching me this about fall. In the fall, the leaves aren't just orange. It's maybe orange and yellow, orange and red. Flowers are the same way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a little bit of yellow and orange. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paintbrush, put some water, go back into the color, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill my paintbrush with yellow. All right, so it's just yellow. I'm absorbing it. It's inside my brush. So I have a paintbrush full of yellow. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just at the top of this, I'm going to add some orange. All right, so I'm just going to dip it in the water a little bit. I'm going to stir it just on the top. So what's going to happen, if I take my brush, I'm going to press and pull, I'm going to get a flow of different colors that's going to come out at the same time. So let's do that again. I'm going to add some yellow. This time I'm going to add a little red so you can see it better. Just at the tip, I'm going to press and pull, and then I'm going to have a really cool, that's a koi fish, right? How cool. These guys are swimming. This is awesome. So I have this going so that I just play with this. Try your favorite color combinations. And I didn't clean it out. I'm just going to press and pull. Press, pull, press, pull. So if you have a lot of paint in your brush, you can get a really fun thing that happens with that. Pretty cool, huh? So we've got mixing two different colors together, which is kind of neat. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that with the dry brush so that you can see what the dry brush looks like. So I'm going to take just a regular, let's take my fan brush so that you can see this. Keep your brush dry, don't stick it in the water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, let's take maybe purple. And I'm just going to take a little bit of purple. And it's just at the tips of this. So if I push and pull, I'm going to get the effect very light. I think, I know I wasn't going to bring up Bob Ross, but Bob Ross would do this with grass and clouds and trees. He would take this technique and add it to something. You can also, I'm going to add some water to it because I wanted my paint's drying out a little bit. But if I take this and I just kind of move it, I get ripples of water. You can see how that works. So it has some really nice feeling to it. Ooh, I'm really going to have some fun with this now. I'm going to take the purple and the blue and mix it together. Get a really nice, and I'm using my palette, mixing the colors on the palette. See what happens? All I'm doing is I'm moving my brush back and forth like this. It could be the start of a stream. My koi fish belong in that stream right there. And then we've got the ripples and the bubbles and everything that go on top of that. Which brings me back over here. This is starting to dry. So what I might do is I might take my really fine paintbrush. I'm not going to take my double secret weapon. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this purple and I can actually control, without my glasses on, I can really start to bring out design or play around with it. Notice it dried, so it's not bleeding now. I don't like the term bleeding, but that's what it's called. And all I'm doing is mixing my colors and coming up with a beautiful. Remember I talked about how I frame things afterwards, or I cut things out and save them as samples. A lot of times I'll have something that I'll do and I'll go back to it and I'll add it to a painting. So I might have done a certain technique and I might really enjoy that. So I might try it out. Little dots. What if I turn those? What are koi fish? Oh, they have those big eyeballs. Let's try that. This guy, and then they have big eyes. Make them smile. But you can do so many fun things. They're drying, so I can go back on top of it and rework on top of it and start playing with it. You can also take, like all my little samples that I have, whenever I have them, what I tend to do is I can actually, here's another sample page that I did here, right? A same thing. There's a dot there and I turned it into something. I said, oh, that's beautiful. So here's my frame. There's a really cool painting, a picture or something. I can go back into that and work in on that. Note cards. Just think, gifts. You don't have to go buy stuff. You can just make your own. Wouldn't it be awesome? Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. So I did talk to you about resist, right? I said, what about that white crayon? So all I'm going to do, what do I do with my glasses so I can see this? Because white on white's hard to see. If I take this white crayon, and I don't have anything in mind, I'm just making the crisscrosses, and I'm going to pick up on a darker color. So let's pick up on that purple, mix and blend. And if I do a wash right over it, where did it go? How come that didn't happen? I don't know, but we'll find out in a second. There it is. It's coming through. So you can start to see where the different, if I blot this with a paper towel, this is kind of fun. You can see where the lines are that I colored in. Probably just needed a little time to, but you can see the resist. I don't know if you can see it at home because of the light, but you can see where the resist was. So say, for example, I was doing I don't know, birch trees or something. I might want to draw with a crayon and leave some spots open and put that in there. So that's probably kind of fun. I don't know if I'll use it again, but that's okay. All right, so let's get into the tubes and then we will start our masterpiece. So I'm using a set that's already been around. You can see from the palette that they're very earthy colors. I tend to do a lot of ocean scenes. I like to do mountain scenes. I use my imagination. When I go on vacation, I'll tend to draw what I see in front of me, which, remember I said note cards? I forgot about this. I received a thank you card from somebody and I said, this is perfect for this class. These are little watercolor butterflies. Now, they just did on this card exactly what I was doing here. So on these little butterflies, took water, painted the shape of the butterfly, and then put the designs on afterwards in the body, the spine. Maybe we could do one later, or you could try one on your own. But this is the same thing, wet, and then adding the water, and then adding the body and the antenna. Oh, that was pretty cool. I like the little pink guy right there. But I thought this was a great opportunity for you to try something. All right. So let's talk about starting something. I'm going to use my imagination, and I like to use it a lot. This piece that's here is just a sample. So I'm going to tear it down, and I'm going to remove the tape. And as I said before, I don't normally use an easel too often. Maybe for a portrait, I might use it. I might use something, but we're going to do the quickest masterpiece you could ever imagine. I like to call it masterpiece because it's the end. So I'm going to do a seascape, one of my favorite things to do. And this piece of paper right here has the start. But what I'm going to do is make this right now and put this on the surface and just make it real quick so you guys can try this out with all the techniques that I just did with you. So I am going to very lightly tape up. I'm not going to put a margin on it. I'm not going to put a border because I'm going to frame it afterwards. So some of the techniques that we just did was wet and then add color afterwards. So I started with water, and I'm going to think about dark down below for the ocean, and then I'm going to add, let's see, I'm going to have a sky, I'm going to have water, I'm going to have beach grass, and maybe some beach. All right, so we're going to take that. I need water, and I need to set this up first. If I take my pencil, I could probably draw a quick horizon line so I can figure out what I wanted to do. I'm standing up, so basically what I'm going to do is use my blotter brush first, and I'm going to do a sky. So all I'm going to do, this, you can't see it because it's wet, I'm putting in water up here. I'm going to add some blue, a little tiny bit. With watercolor, you just need a little tiny touch. Sometimes people tend to put too much in there. So the blue that I'm using is a cobalt blue. Some people like a little turquoise. Some people like some other colors. I'm going to take this blue, stir it up, and all I'm going to do is let this run at the top. I'm going to create a sky. I want to find that cool turquoise that I had before. And we're going to take that. Notice how it's dripping. If I want to add more drip, I can control it. It's going to stop at the end. Remember we talked about that a little bit? And then what I want to do is maybe have it be a little bit more intense because it's a little bit darker over in this corner in here. So the technique of vacuuming, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to pick up extra. And there's so many different colors. So real simple, right? That's all I did was this. And I've got my sky, I've got some clouds in the background. I'm going to create and have a darker color. This is they call this intense phthalo blue. And I tend to just go for it. You know what I mean? I like just do it. I'm going to take this and I'm going to take my square brush that I was showing you before. Kind of has like a flat edge. And I want this to be concentrated. Why do I want it to be concentrated? Because I don't want it to run. I really want this dark color. So I'm going to make this go straight across. Notice how thick. So here's my horizon line. And now I can add water to this. And you know what? If I add a little brown to make it more like Cape Cod, that gray color. All right, look at that. I'm getting crooked here, but that's okay. All right, a little bit of landmass. I'm going to use an ochre color. This time I'm going to use another flat brush. And mix it in with some green. Then I'm going to add some land in the background. It's not perfect. Doesn't need to be. Not perfect. It's my landmass. Might be a sailboat out there. It might be, oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, that's so awesome. All right, so then I'm going to take my favorite brush and add some sand at the bottom. Here's some sand. Mix a little brown and green in with that. Maybe a little bit more brown. I don't even look at the colors. So I'm going to take this, let this dry for 2 seconds, and then I'm going to take, at the very end of this, I'm going to make some beach grass. So I'm going to want a thin brush, some intense dark green, and I'm just going to take and pull up. And I'm going to work on top of it. Now, I don't like that green. No mistakes. Go ahead and add some more ochre. How many minutes did I work on this? Not too much, right? So I've got this cool thing happening. I might want to mix some light and some footprints and some other things that are happening. And then finally, maybe we stick a little sailboat out there. I'm not going to make it white. Not going to make it white. I'm going to make it on the horizon line. It's going to be a couple of them out there. All right, so I've got that. Let's make a little bit of steps. All right, I'm going to stop because I want it to dry and come back into this. Really great start. But let's talk about finishing it. I've got the opportunity to have a couple of paintings. Do you see what I've just done? I didn't even spend 5 minutes on it. There's this one, there's this view. Maybe I want to change the horizon line. add some crabs to this and some other things here. I used quick techniques, and we're down towards the end of our time. So what I want to do finally is just say I have to use this little brush. I love this brush. I'm going to add, notice it started to dry. I'm using what brush? The fan brush to create that really cool technique. All right, so I'm going to tape this and this. So what I'm going to say is I didn't make any mistakes or goofs, right? I explored. I tried lots of different materials. I shared them with you. There are no secrets. I want you to try it. I want you to have a good time. All right? My name's Heidi Hurley. I'm here to help you all explore and be creative with the arts. And that's really what we're doing. I hope you come back. We're going to try all kinds of materials. If you have any suggestions or ideas, make sure you let us know at BCAM. Okay? Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.